something is taking place behind the silence. And if you have been sensing it lately, please understand that it is not simply your imagination. There is a final decision slowly taking shape in the hidden space of their heart. And somehow, your presence is deeply connected to that decision. They may appear peaceful on the outside. They may seem distant, normal, unaffected, or even cold. But beneath that outer behavior, something much deeper is happening. A truth they spent so much time avoiding has now become too heavy for them to continue ignoring. And here is the part that most people never notice. This is not only about missing you. It is not simply about whether they will come closer to you or completely disappear from your life. This is about what your connection awakened inside them, what it revealed, and what it made them feel when they could no longer escape from their own emotions. Stay with me, because the next few minutes are important. What they are deciding now is not something small, it is not casual, and it is not something that will disappear tomorrow. This is a turning point in their inner world. They are standing at the edge of a truth that could change the direction of their life. And whether they finally move toward you or decide to move away, they will not come out of this moment as the exact same person they were before. You need to understand this clearly. The tension you have been feeling has a reason. The distance has a reason. The silence has a reason. Behind everything you have been noticing, a private, emotional battle is slowly reaching its highest point. And what happens next may reveal much more about who they truly are than anything they have said before. When fear can no longer hide behind excuses, what you are sensing becomes much easier to understand. It is not necessarily wishful thinking. It is not simply a fantasy created by longing. It can be the quiet movement of another person struggling with their own feelings because your presence touched something very deep inside them, something buried in the hidden corners of their mind. They are standing at an important crossroads, and strangely enough, almost every road in front of them seems to lead their thoughts back toward you. For a long time, they tried to distract themselves. They placed their attention into daily routines, work, responsibilities, pride, social noise, and distance. They tried to make themselves believe that staying busy would make the feelings disappear. They tried to explain away the intensity of what happened between you. They told themselves that enough time would solve it. They believed enough space would weaken it. They hoped that enough silence would eventually make the memories lose their power. But some emotional connections do not disappear simply because someone decides not to think about them. The more they pushed this connection down, the more it seemed to rise again. The more they tried to call it temporary, the more their inner world treated it as something meaningful. The more they attempted to convince themselves that it was already over, the more unfinished it began to feel inside them. That is because what happened between you was never as shallow as they wanted to believe. It reached underneath the surface and touched deeper parts of who they are. It reached places within them that cannot simply be erased when life becomes uncomfortable. Certain feelings can be ignored for a while, but ignoring something does not always make it disappear. Sometimes silence gives those feelings more time to grow, and now they are doing something they never expected to do. They are reviewing everything. Not only what you meant to them, but also what this connection says about the person they have become. They are looking back at conversations, moments, reactions, choices, and even the things they did not say. Listen carefully, because this is where everything starts to change. When someone begins questioning the story they once told themselves, change is already much closer than it seems. They may have spent a long time believing that they understood the situation. They may have created a simple explanation for why things happened the way they did. But now that explanation is beginning to feel incomplete. You must understand this part. The decision they are struggling with is not only about staying or leaving. It is not only about contacting you or remaining silent. At the deepest level, It is about whether they are willing to face their real self. That is the deeper fear. One part of them feels naturally drawn toward you with a force that is difficult to explain. Your absence does not feel neutral to them. It feels like something is missing. It feels like something remains unresolved. It creates a quiet space in their life that keeps reminding them of what they experienced with you. No matter how hard they try to move forward, something keeps bringing their attention back. It may happen during a quiet night. It may happen while they are driving. It may happen when they hear a certain song, see something familiar, remember a conversation, or suddenly find themselves thinking about a moment they thought they had forgotten. But another part of them resists with almost the same strength, because admitting what they feel would require vulnerability. It would require honesty. It would require them to stop pretending that they have everything under control. It would ask them to remove the protective walls they have depended on for a long time. And real change can be frightening. It shakes old defenses. It breaks familiar patterns. It challenges the identity a person created to keep themselves protected. Sometimes people do not fear love itself. They fear what love might force them to confront within themselves. That is why the energy around this connection may feel heavier now. That is why the silence may somehow feel more intense than words. They are no longer simply running away from the truth. They are beginning to sit with it. They are being pushed to ask themselves questions they avoided before. Why do you still live inside their thoughts? Why does your memory continue returning during quiet moments? Why does your absence still affect them? Why have other people, other experiences, or other distractions failed to completely replace what your presence made them feel? These questions can become uncomfortable because they do not have easy answers. This is the threshold before clarity. A person can argue with their own heart for only so long before something inside them demands a decision. The mind can create explanations. Fear can create excuses. Pride can create distance. But eventually, a person has to face what they truly feel. And when that moment arrives, the mask begins to crack. Stay with this, because the next step reveals whether fear will continue controlling them or whether truth will finally become stronger than fear. If they choose to return, it will not necessarily be because everything suddenly became easy. It will not be because all the problems disappeared overnight. It will be because they finally recognized the rare value of what was shared between you. They may finally understand that some connections do not come into a person's life repeatedly. Sometimes a person realizes the value of something only after experiencing its absence. Sometimes distance creates the clarity that closeness could not provide. And sometimes silence makes a person hear the truth they were too distracted to hear before. But if they choose to walk away, please understand what that does not mean. It does not mean you were not enough. It does not mean your love lacked depth. It does not mean the connection had no meaning. It may simply mean they were not prepared for the level of honesty, vulnerability, and inner change that loving you required from them. That distinction is important. Your worth should never depend entirely on another person's ability to recognize it. Their decision is a reflection of their readiness, their fears, their emotional maturity, and their choices. It does not automatically define your value. That is why your role right now is not to chase. It is not to force. It is not to pressure them into making a decision. And it is not to spend every moment trying to control what happens next. Let the truth do its work. Let time reveal what words could not explain. Let their actions eventually speak louder than their silence. What is unfolding inside them appears much heavier than a passing doubt. It is an internal conflict between what they feel and what they fear. On one side, there is an emotional pull toward you. That pull carries memories, warmth, longing, comfort, familiarity, and a deep feeling of emotional belonging. There are parts of the connection that made them feel seen in a way they may not have expected. On the other side, there is an old, protective voice. That voice may have been created from previous pain, disappointment, rejection, betrayal, fear, or the simple habit of protecting themselves before anyone else can hurt them. That voice tells them to remain guarded. It tells them to keep their distance. It tells them that being emotionally open is dangerous. It tells them that staying alone is safer than risking another wound. These two forces are colliding inside them right now, and the pressure is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. They may try to hide inside normal life. They may keep themselves busy. They may spend more time working, talking to other people, focusing on responsibilities, watching something, scrolling through their phone, or simply filling every quiet moment with noise. They may even act as if none of this matters. But the harder they try to bury what they feel, the more strongly it can return when the distractions disappear. Because the real battle was never truly outside of them. It has always been inside. And that is why their next move matters far more than it may appear from the outside. You became a catalyst in their life. Even if neither of you fully understood it at the time, something about this connection challenged the emotional walls they had built to survive. You touched a version of them that existed beneath control, beneath pride, beneath appearance, and beneath all the careful methods they learned to use to protect themselves. You may have brought out emotions they were not prepared to handle. You may have made them question beliefs they had carried for years. You may have shown them a side of themselves they had successfully hidden from everyone else. And now they are facing a difficult choice. They can remain inside the limits of the person they have always been, or they can step into an unfamiliar version of themselves, one that requires courage, softness, honesty, openness, and emotional risk. That unknown version of themselves can feel frightening because there is no guarantee. There is no perfect protection. There is no promise that vulnerability will never lead to pain. But without vulnerability, there can also be no genuine emotional connection. This inner struggle is exhausting them. You may have noticed it through the inconsistency you have experienced, the push and pull, the moments when they appear ready to move closer, followed by periods when they suddenly close themselves off again. One day they may seem emotionally present, and the next they may appear distant. This does not always mean manipulation. Sometimes it is what happens when a person genuinely wants a connection, but is also afraid of the transformation that comes with it. They may want closeness and fear it at the same time. They may want to speak and still choose silence. They may miss you and still refuse to reach out. Contradictory behavior can sometimes come from an internal contradiction. Their heart may be saying one thing while their fear is saying another. And as this pressure continues to grow, it begins to burn away the illusion they created. They can no longer easily pretend that you were simply a brief moment in their life. They can no longer comfortably tell themselves that you were just another passing person, or that what they felt would disappear naturally with time. They are being pushed to see you with greater clarity. But more importantly, they are being pushed to see themselves with greater honesty. Old memories may begin returning with unexpected strength. Shared emotions may feel more powerful than they did before. Small moments that once seemed ordinary may suddenly appear meaningful. Conversations they thought were forgotten may come back into their mind. Every silence can feel different now. Every absence can carry a different meaning. Every reminder can open the door they thought they had already closed. And this uncomfortable inner work is necessary because real decisions are rarely born from endless avoidance. They are born when the fog finally begins to clear. For a while, someone can remain undecided. They can stay between two choices. They can keep telling themselves that they need more time. They can avoid difficult conversations and postpone difficult emotions. But eventually, the pressure becomes too great. Eventually, something has to change. That is the stage they may be approaching now.
They are beginning to understand that avoiding the connection does not necessarily erase it. Creating distance does not always create peace. Staying silent does not always bring closure. Sometimes silence simply gives a person's deepest thoughts enough room to become impossible to ignore.
And this is why you should not judge everything only by what is happening on the surface. Someone can appear completely calm while experiencing a storm inside. Someone can look unaffected while replaying memories at night. Someone can seem distant while secretly wondering whether they made the wrong decision. Someone can remain silent while fighting a conversation in their mind over and over again. This is why you should not rush to conclusions based only on their current behavior. Give the situation space. Give yourself space. Let reality reveal itself through consistent actions rather than temporary emotions. Because eventually, their inner conflict must produce an outer choice. And when that choice comes, it will tell you much more than all the mixed signals ever could. If they are ready to face the truth, they will have to become more honest. They will have to take responsibility for their feelings. They will have to stop hiding behind pride and fear. They will have to understand that coming toward you means more than simply sending a message or appearing again. It means showing up differently. It means being willing to communicate. It means being willing to listen. It means accepting emotional responsibility. It means understanding that a real connection cannot survive forever on confusion, silence, and avoidance. That is another truth you need to remember. You cannot make someone emotionally ready. You cannot force someone to become courageous. You cannot carry another person's emotional work for them. You can only decide how you will respond to what they choose. So protect your peace while this unfolds. Do not allow uncertainty to consume every part of your day. Do not make their silence the center of your life. Do not stop living simply because someone else has not yet decided what they want. Let them face their own inner battle. Your job is not to fight it for them. Your job is to remain grounded in your own truth. Because whether they return or not, something meaningful has already happened. You have seen what this connection can awaken. You have learned something about yourself. You have felt emotions that may have changed the way you understand love, attachment, vulnerability, and human connection. And perhaps that is one of the deepest purposes of this entire experience. Sometimes another person enters our life not simply to stay forever, but to awaken something within us that was waiting to be seen. Sometimes they stay. Sometimes they leave. Sometimes they return after learning what they could not understand before. But the lesson remains. And right now, they may be standing in front of their own lesson. They can either continue protecting the old version of themselves, or they can become brave enough to face the truth. The silence cannot continue hiding everything forever. Sooner or later, something has to speak. It may be their actions. It may be their words. It may be a return. It may be a final goodbye. But whatever happens, clarity will eventually replace confusion. So do not let fear make you chase an answer before the answer is ready to appear. Do not let longing convince you that you must control the outcome. And do not mistake silence for the absence of feeling. Sometimes silence is simply the place where a person is forced to hear themselves. Right now, they may be hearing themselves more clearly than they have in a very long time. They may be realizing that what they tried to forget still matters. They may be realizing that the connection changed them. They may be realizing that walking away did not erase what happened. And they may finally be asking the question they avoided for so long: what am I really going to do with what I feel? That question is where the final decision begins. And whatever answer comes from it, remember this: you do not need to lose yourself while waiting for someone else to find their courage. Stay calm. Stay grounded. Allow time to reveal the truth. If they are meant to step toward you,
They will eventually have to move beyond fear and meet you with honesty. And if they choose another path, you will still have the strength to continue forward without carrying the weight of their unfinished inner battle.
Because your life is not supposed to remain frozen while another person decides what they are ready to become. The connection may have awakened something in them, but this moment can awaken something in you too. It can teach you patience without making you passive. It can teach you hope without making you dependent. It can teach you love without asking you to abandon yourself. And perhaps that is the real turning point. Not only what they choose next, but who you choose to be while the answer is still unknown. The silence is changing. The inner battle is reaching a point where avoidance can no longer remain comfortable. And when the truth finally rises above the fear, you will not need to force it, chase it, or beg for it. You will simply see it. And when you see it, everything that once felt confusing may finally begin to make sense. Starts to rise, and the heart is no longer willing to remain buried under fear. And yes, that lifting is happening now, even if everything still feels quiet on the surface. There comes a moment when uncertainty becomes too heavy to keep carrying, and they are reaching that moment now. Not because the world around them has suddenly changed, but because the mind cannot remain divided forever. For a long time, they tried to control their emotions by making them seem smaller than they really were. They told themselves it was not that serious. They convinced themselves they could handle it, hide it, bury it, and eventually grow beyond it. But feelings this deep do not simply disappear. They do not remain frozen forever. They continue growing in silence. They become stronger during absence. They wait patiently until the person reaches a place where denying them is no longer possible. Now those feelings are coming back in waves, especially late at night, during quiet moments, and through memories they never expected to think about again. In the unusual silence that comes after a busy day, they are beginning to notice something they can no longer ignore. Their mind naturally finds its way back to you. Again and again, without planning it, without trying to force it, they remember your presence. Your energy remains almost like a soft, constant sound in the background of their life. Even when they try to distract themselves, there is still a quiet feeling that something important is missing. They may not always say it out loud, and they may not even fully understand why they feel this way, but the emptiness has become harder to ignore. And your absence has played a very important part in this process. By stepping back, by refusing to fill every empty space, and by allowing the distance to exist, you left them alone with their own thoughts. That silence became a mirror. It showed them things they could avoid when you were always present. Without your energy there to soften the distance, they had to experience the full emotional weight of what your absence created. They felt the missing comfort. They noticed the missing spark. They noticed the missing sense of emotional safety. They began to understand that your presence had given them something they had not fully appreciated while it was available. And this is important, so do not click away now. Because when someone finally begins to feel the real shape of what has been lost, they stop asking whether it mattered. Instead, they begin asking themselves whether they waited too long to admit that it mattered. That is a very different question. It comes from a deeper place. It is no longer about curiosity. It is about realization. In their quiet moments, they compare things, sometimes without even meaning to. They compare what they felt around you with what they experience in other parts of their life. They compare the emotional depth they shared with you to the ordinary connections around them. They may not consciously sit down and make a list, but their heart keeps making the comparison for them.